Have you ever wondered, what if the people you trust aren't who they seem? Could a single night blur the line between reality and illusion? Who was really in the hotel that night? Your love or a stranger? Can your mind be tricked by what your eyes see? And what horrors hide in the shadows of the unreal? Welcome to Classic Storytime Hub. Today we bring you a reimagined version of The Realm of the Unreal by Ambrose Bierce. Join us as we unravel this chilling classic, reimagined for today's audience. The road between Auburn and Newcastle clung to the ravine like a ribbon of danger, twisting along the creek, sometimes carved from the steep hillside, sometimes patched together with jagged stones wrested from the roaring waters below. The hills on either side were cloaked in shadow, their dense forests swallowing the moonlight. On nights like this, a single misstep could hurl a traveler into the churning creek. I had ridden from Newcastle, the storm-swollen waters roaring beside me, the darkness pressing in like a living thing. The narrow path demanded every ounce of attention, my eyes straining to make out the faint gleam of the roadway under my horse's hooves. And then, suddenly, a figure appeared almost beneath the animal's nose. I pulled hard on the reins, my horse stumbling back, nearly rearing. "Forgive me," I said, my voice tense. "I did not see you, sir." "You could hardly be expected to," came the calm, courteous reply. "The creek is deafening tonight, and I could not hear you approach." The voice hit me like a memory I had tried to bury. 5 years had passed, yet it was unmistakable. A chill ran down my spine. "You are Dr. Doramore, I believe," I asked, my voice steady despite the sudden dread. "Yes," he said smoothly, stepping closer to the side of the carriage. "And you, my friend, must be Mr. Manrich. More than glad to see you. The excess, I confess," he added with a light, almost teasing laugh, "comes from the hope that you might offer me a ride along your way." Of course, I extend the invitation," I said, forcing a warmth into my words my heart did not feel. But inside, unease coiled around me like the darkness, whispering that this meeting, after so many years, would not be simple. Dr. Doramore slid into the carriage beside me with a polite nod of thanks, and I guided the horse forward with the same careful caution as before. Perhaps it was only my imagination, but the rest of the journey felt swallowed by a chill, creeping fog. My skin prickled with cold, the road seemed to stretch endlessly, and when we finally reached Auburn, the town lay before us like a ghostly shadow, cheerless, silent, utterly deserted. It must have been early evening, yet no windows glimmered with light, no sign of life stirred in the empty streets. Doramore spoke at length of his travels, recounting the years that had passed since our last meeting. I remember the cadence of his voice, the rhythm of his words, but the details? They slipped through my mind like water through fingers. Foreign lands, journeys undertaken, a return home, these were the only remnants my memory clung to. As for myself, I cannot recall speaking, though doubtless I did. One thing I felt with a stark clarity: his presence beside me was deeply unsettling. Unease gnawed at the edges of my consciousness, a cold dread I could not name. By the time we pulled up under the dim glow of the Putnam house, I felt an almost tangible sense of having escaped some unseen spiritual peril. Yet that relief was fleeting. The realization that Dr. Doramore, the very source of my disquiet, was staying in the same hotel was enough to turn that relief into an uneasy tension once more. To understand the strangeness of my feelings toward him, I must explain how our acquaintance had begun. Years before, I had been in the library of the Bohemian Club in San Francisco, surrounded by half a dozen men, all of us immersed in conversation. The topic had turned to sleight of hand, the illusions of prestidigitators, those masters of deception who could twist reality with the flick of the wrist. One of them was performing at a local theater.
"These fellows are frauds in every sense," said one of the men, his voice sharp. "They can accomplish nothing that would truly deceive a clever mind. Even the humblest juggler by the roadside in India could drive them to madness." "And how, for example, might that be done?" another asked, lighting a cigar, curiosity dancing in the smoke-wreathed air. "For instance," one of the men continued, his voice low and intense, "imagine the ordinary tricks you've seen, the impossible made real. Objects hurled into the air, never touching the ground. Seeds planted in bare soil, sprouting, growing, blooming before your very eyes. A man confined in a wicker basket, pierced through with swords as he screams and bleeds, and when the basket is lifted, nothing remains. Or a silken ladder tossed skyward, climbed, and the climber vanishing into thin air." I frowned, perhaps too sharply. "Preposterous," I said, the word sharper than I intended. "Surely no one believes such things." "Believe them? I have seen them too often to deny it," replied the first speaker calmly. "But I do," chimed in a journalist of some renown, his tone eager, eyes glinting with certainty. "I have reported these feats countless times. Nothing but personal observation could shake my conviction. Gentlemen, I stake my very word on it." The room fell silent. All eyes had turned behind me. I twisted in my seat and froze. A man had entered the room. Evening dress, immaculate yet somehow menacing. His skin was dark, almost swarthy, his face thin, framed by a coarse black beard. Wild black hair fell about his forehead in disarray. A high, commanding nose and eyes. Oh, those eyes! Cold, glittering, utterly soulless, like a cobra poised to strike. One of the men rose, bowing politely. "Gentlemen, Dr. Dorrimore of Calcutta." He acknowledged each introduction with a deep, deliberate bow, the kind meant to convey grace, but carried an undercurrent of subtle mockery. His smile was thin, cynical, almost contemptuous. Every gesture, every glance radiated a strange charm tinged with danger. There was something irresistibly unsettling about him, an allure that demanded attention, yet set your instincts on edge. I could only think of one phrase to describe him: disagreeably captivating. His presence shifted the conversation into quiet, meandering channels. He spoke little, I cannot recall a single word, but his voice lingered, rich and melodious, weaving through the air like a subtle spell. Yet, as with his eyes and that unnerving smile, it left me uneasy. After a few minutes, I rose to leave. Almost simultaneously, he did the same, slipping on his overcoat with effortless grace. "Mr. Manrich," he said, his tone calm, almost teasing, "I am going your way." The thought struck me sharply. The devil you are, I wondered. How could he possibly know where I am headed? Yet before my mind could spiral, I said aloud, forcing a steady note into my voice, "I shall be pleased to have your company." We stepped into the night together. No cabs rumbled nearby, streetcars were silent, and the full moon cast a pale, cold glow over the city. The night air was crisp, refreshing, almost inviting, as we began climbing the California Street hill. I assumed he would turn towards one of the hotels, yet he walked beside me, silent. "You do not believe the tales of the Hindu jugglers," he said abruptly, his voice slicing through the calm night. "How do you know that?" I asked, startled. Without answering, he placed the light hand upon my arm, and with the other motioned to the sidewalk ahead. Almost at our feet, bathed in the moon's icy light, lay a man's body, face upturned, stark white, frozen in a final, silent expression. A sword, its jeweled hilt glinting cruelly, was driven upright into the chest, a dark pool of blood spreading across the stone. Shock and terror gripped me, not merely at the sight itself, but at the impossible way it appeared. Only moments before, I had believed my eyes had scanned this very stretch of sidewalk from end to end. How could they have missed this horrifying spectacle until now, suddenly revealed in the unforgiving moonlight? As my mind struggled to clear from the haze of shock, I took in the full horror before me. The body lay in evening dress, the overcoat flung wide to reveal the pristine dress coat, the gleaming white tie, the broad shirt front, and the sword driven straight through it.
And then, the revelation that froze my blood. Every feature, every detail of attire matched my companion exactly. It was Dr. Dorrimore, down to the smallest detail, lying dead beneath the cold moonlight. I spun around, searching for the living man, but he was nowhere to be seen. Panic surged through me, and I stumbled backward down the hill, retreating from that nightmare. Before I had gone more than a few steps, a sudden, crushing grip on my shoulder stopped me in my tracks. My heart leaped into my throat. The dead man, sword still embedded in his chest, stood beside me. With a swift, unnerving motion, he drew the sword free with his free hand and flung it aside. The jeweled hilt caught the moonlight, the blade gleaming unsullied as it struck the pavement with a metallic clang, then vanished completely. The man, swarthy and impossibly alive, released his hold on my shoulder and regarded me with the same thin, cynical smile I had first encountered. No corpse could ever possess such a gaze. The sight, paradoxically, restored some fragment of my composure. I turned my eyes back to the sidewalk and saw it smooth, uninterrupted, stretching street to street as if nothing had ever occurred. "What in the world is this devilry?" I demanded, my voice trembling, though sharpened by outrage. "It is what some are pleased to call jugglery," he replied lightly, a hard laugh escaping him. He turned down DuPont Street and vanished into the night, leaving me alone with the lingering terror and awe. I would not see him again until our fateful encounter in the Auburn Ravine. The next day, I caught no glimpse of Dr. Dorrimore. The clerk at the Putnam House explained that a slight illness had confined him to his rooms. Later that afternoon at the railway station, a much more welcome surprise awaited me: the unexpected arrival of Miss Margaret Corray and her mother, traveling all the way from Oakland. Relief and delight washed over me, a fleeting comfort after the previous night's horrors. This is no tale of love as the world pretends to know it. I am no poet, no spinner of sentimental yarns. True love cannot thrive in a literature enslaved to the prudish dictates of a self-appointed guardian of innocence, the so-called young girl, whose reign, enforced by her false ministers of censorship, suffocates passion, leaving morality to starve on the dry crumbs of propriety. Let it suffice, then, that Miss Margaret Corray and I were engaged. She and her mother took rooms at the hotel where I lodged, and for 2 weeks I saw her every day. Happiness was mine, golden and unbroken, save for one relentless shadow, Dr. Dorrimore, whom I had, perhaps foolishly, introduced to them. To their eyes he was impeccable. What could I say? I had not a single fault to speak of. His manners were polished, refined, qualities that carry a man far in the estimation of women. And yet each time I saw Margaret walking beside him, a surge of fury gripped me. Once, in a moment of ill-advised impulse, I protested. When pressed for reasons, I had none. Perhaps she glimpsed in my expression the folly of jealousy. Perhaps a trace of disdain flickered in her eyes. Over the following days, my mood darkened. I became morose, irritable, consciously disagreeable. The thought of leaving for San Francisco grew irresistible. By the next day, I resolved to go, but of this I said nothing. The tension tightened around me, an invisible cord pulling me toward a decision I could not yet voice.
On the outskirts, yet somehow at the very heart of Auburn, lay an old, abandoned cemetery. By daylight, it was merely neglected. By night, it became a place shaped by dread itself. Railings lay broken or rotted into the earth. Graves had sunk inward, as if the ground were slowly swallowing its dead. From some rose tall pine trees, their twisted roots breaking through coffins and stone alike, committing silent, unforgivable trespasses. Headstones lay cracked and toppled, brambles clawed across the soil, and the remains of a fence offered no barrier to wandering cattle and pigs. It was an insult to the living, a slander against the dead, and a quiet blasphemy whispered into the dark. It was there, on the very evening I had resolved, in a fit of madness, to abandon everything I loved, that I found myself drawn. The half-moon cast a sickly light through the branches, illuminating fragments of decay, while deep shadows pooled between the trees, as though conspiring to withhold revelations too dreadful to arrive all at once. I followed what had once been a gravel path. From the darkness ahead, a figure stepped into the moonlight. I recognized him instantly, Dr. Dorrimore. I remained hidden in shadow, fists clenched, teeth set, fighting the overwhelming urge to rush forward and end him where he stood. Then another shape emerged. A second figure moved toward him and took his arm. It was Margaret Corey. What followed exists only in fragments. I know that I lunged forward, consumed by a singular murderous intent. I know that when dawn broke, I was found battered and bleeding, fingerprints bruised deep into my throat. They carried me back to the Putnam house, where I drifted for days in fever and delirium. These things I know because they were told to me. What I know for myself is this. When consciousness slowly returned, when strength crept back into my limbs and the world regained its shape, the first thing I did was send for the hotel clerk. "Are Mrs. Corey and her daughter still here?" I asked, my voice tight with urgency. "What name did you say?" the clerk replied, his brow furrowed. "Corey," I repeated. "Nobody by that name has been here," he said simply. I felt my heart falter. "I beg you, do not trifle with me," I said, my tone sharp with impatience. "You see I am recovered. Tell me the truth." "I give you my word," he said earnestly. "We have had no guests of that name." His words stunned me into silence. My mind reeled, struggling to piece together the impossible events I had lived through. Finally, I asked the question that had been burning inside me. "Where is Dr. Dorrimore?" "He left on the morning of your incident and has not been heard of since. It was a rough deal he gave you."
Thus ends the story as it is known to me. Margaret Corey is now my wife, and she has never seen Auburn. Throughout those weeks, the ones I have attempted to recount as faithfully as memory allows, she remained in Oakland, bewildered and anxious, wondering why her lover had disappeared without a word. A few days ago, I read a paragraph in the Baltimore Sun that brought a shiver to my spine. Professor Valentine Dorrimore, the hypnotist, drew a large audience last night. The lecturer, who spent most of his life in India, delivered astonishing exhibitions of hypnotic power, inducing participants to see and hear what he willed. Twice he hypnotized the entire audience, reporters alone excepted, creating the most extraordinary illusions. Most intriguing were his explanations of the famous performances of Hindu jugglers, whose feats, long recounted by travelers, he attributes to mastery over the human mind. According to Professor Dorrimore, a particularly susceptible subject can be kept in the realm of the unreal for weeks, months, even years, dominated entirely by the operator's suggestions. The implications of such power are, to say the least, unsettling. And so it is. The shadows of Auburn, the ghostly illusions, the impossible encounters, all were perhaps the work of one man, a master of the mind, whose art could bend reality itself. I have lived, loved, and returned to a world that is real, but every so often, when the moon is high and the air is still, I remember the realm of the unreal and shiver.
And thus the story ended.
If you liked this journey into the worlds of classic literature, do not forget to support us by subscribing so we can tell you more. And hey, if there's a classic tale you'd love to hear told in this suspenseful style, drop its name in the comments below. Your suggestion might be our next chilling adventure.